It was December 1862, and Walt Whitman was reading the newspaper. He saw a list of soldiers who were injured in the Battle of Fredericksburg in Virginia. The newspaper listed some soldiers injured from the 51st New York, and one of the names was George Whitmore. Could there be some guy named George Whitmore in the same infantry as his brother, or was there a typo and it was actually his brother George Whitman? Not taking any chances, Whitman booked passage on a train going south. He rushed to his brother, who was at the Union Army camp in Falmouth, Virginia by this point. Whitmore rushed to his brother. George, are you okay?" Turns out George had a small wound, some even described it as a scratch, on his face or jaw. As you can imagine, Whitman was relieved his brother was okay. Phew! While with his brother, he discovered that many of the other wounded soldiers didn't fare as well as his brother, and he was moved by their suffering. So when those soldiers were transferred to hospitals in Washington, D.C., Whitman went with them. He then spent the next 10 years in D.C. volunteering at military hospitals to lift the spirits of the soldiers who were there. Whitman lived in several places in D.C. during the 10 years he lived there. One of the places he lived was near Vermont Avenue and L Street. During this time, President Lincoln was living at his cottage about 3 miles from the White House. Apparently, the White House wasn't designed very well to handle the heat in the summer, but there was this cottage at the old soldiers' home, which was a military asylum, and Lincoln and his family would move there from June to November during 1862, 1863, and 1864. Lincoln would come back to the White House every day to work. The path he and his military security took from the cottage to the White House went right past the house Whitman was staying in at the time. On many occasions, the two would nod at each other as if to say hi to each other. The two never met, but Whitman said that he saw Lincoln something like 20 or 30 times between 1861 and 1865, and sometimes they were very close to each other. A combination of having the same political beliefs and seeing Lincoln in person so much probably caused Whitman to have such an affection for the president. At one point, he was at the White House to get a train pass to go to New York. He saw Lincoln talking to a man. Whitman later wrote in his diary of Lincoln that his, quote, "face and manner has an expression and are expressibly sweet," end quote. And then he added to the end of the note, quote, "I love the president personally," end quote. Whitman was not in D.C. on that fateful day. Supposedly he and his family heard the news at breakfast and that no one ate, nor did they speak that day. Whitman went on to write 3 poems about Lincoln's passing. The first one was written on the day of his funeral, and it was titled, "Hushed Be the Camps Today." Then he followed that up with this poem and with "When Lilacs Last in the Dooryard Bloomed," my favorite title for a poem. "O Captain, my Captain, our fearful trip is done. The ship has weathered every rack, the prize we sought is won. The port is near, the bells I hear, the people all exulting, while follow eyes the steady keel, the vessel grim and daring. But oh heart, 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 oh the bleeding drops of red, where on the deck my captain lies, fallen cold and dead. O Captain, my Captain, rise up and hear the bells. Rise up, for you the flag is flung, for you the bugle trills, for you bouquets and ribbon wreaths, for you the shores a-crowding, for they call, the swaying mass, their eager faces turning. Here, Captain, dear father, this arm beneath your head. It is some dream that on the deck you've fallen cold and dead." My Captain does not answer. His lips are pale and still. My father does not feel my arm. He has no pulse nor will. The ship is anchored safe and sound, its voyage closed and done. From fearful trip the victor ship comes in with object won. Exult all shores, ring all bells, but I with mournful tread walk the deck my Captain lies, fallen, cold and dead.